Hello, I'm Trevor.
And I'm Laura.
We have a deep passion for helping couples build strong, lasting relationships that truly thrive.
So we created Tools for Marriage.
Tangible, practical tools couples can start using right away.
Wherever you are in the world,
And wherever you are in your relationship.
we truly believe these tools can improve any marriage.
And maybe we put a few divorce lawyers out of business along the way. Hi there, welcome to another episode of Tools for Marriage. Laura and I are very excited today to be with some wonderful people that we're excited to introduce you to.
Yes.
And so let me read a little bio to give you a sense of what you're in for here, and then we'll dive into the discussion. So this is Ann and Robert G. Lee. They're coming up on their 44th year of marriage. Amazing. Ann's been a marriage and family therapist for over 22 years, and Robert's been a working stand-up comedian for close to 40 years. She writes poetry and prose, and he writes punchlines. Recently, they've combined their talents. They're launching into a new endeavor, marriage retreats, and they're writing a new book, A Therapist and a Comedian Walk into a Marriage. Robert and Ann, welcome to the Tools for Marriage podcast. We're so excited to have you here today.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. This will be fun.
That's exciting.
Let's go. Ask a good question. Go ahead, go for it.
All right.
Well, we've been talking this whole time, like, okay, we got to get this started. So, because we're excited
That's
to learn
right.
about
Well,
it.
you know what I like to know, because this is a sort of marriage-related podcast, I want to hear the story of how the two of you met.
Okay, and that's we were driving down and she said, "Oh, you can tell the story about how we met," because that whenever we do couples, there are a couple different things we do for singles, things like that, and so you have to make it concise. But yes, the story of how we met is a great one and I just make many jokes in my routine about how we met. And then how today it's all online. You swipe left, you swipe right. You have to do research beforehand. Are they a vegan? All those things. But ours was we both went to the same college in Ohio, Ohio University, little place in the hills of Appalachia down in southeastern Ohio. And they always start off with big lecture halls whenever you go someplace. So ours was introduction to radio and television, whatever. So probably 200-300 people in this big lecture hall, and she's right in the middle of it. I said, that girl is cute. And so I immediately saw her. And then from that, we went to another class, and this was actually comedy writing. And so it was just, that sounds interesting. And I was in the back of the room, she was in the front, and I moved up one seat every week until I was directly I was
breathing down my neck.
It's just way too shy to ask her out. Wasn't going to do it.
Hopefully this course is enough weeks that eventually
Exactly.
you'll see the next story.
How big is
I was
this
1
class?
week shy.
Because it came so close. And then by the end of it, right in the middle of all that, there was a basketball court at Ohio University. She's leaning on the rail. Those
Second story,
looking
looking over.
They have those risers that pull out, and they were pushed in, so it was a railing. And the janitors at Ohio University, thank you, OU. I owe you my life, I guess. They tied it together with just coat wire.
Yeah.
And
There was
so
a piece missing of the bar.
So she leaned on it. And it broke, and she fell all the way from the second story down.
I flipped, and I landed carrying this 3-foot broken bar.
Her father could have owned Ohio University. He didn't sue him,
Right.
but she busted her leg, and it wasn't broken. It was strained.
Really wiped out, though.
But you were in a cast and crutches. And so then I knew she has nowhere to go. So I finally, that was it. I got my courage up and I asked her out. And so I went over to her dorm and I put her on my back, and she carried her crutches, and I walked her uptown, and we had the best first date ever, where I tell everybody that I apologize for breaking her leg, but I didn't really. But we saw the first, just show our relationship, we went to a Looney Tunes retrospective. And they just put all the cartoons together, and we died laughing. And
It
then
was my first test. Would I laugh at Looney Tunes?
Right.
I think so.
Yeah.
And then had pizza on the courthouse steps in the college, and then walked her home, and it was great. It was just the best first date ever. It's all gone downhill from that point on. And it was really good.
Really good.
It was a
And then
great
it's
start.
Good way to start.
It's like we've had struggles after that. But so it took. I mean, that was the beginning of college, and tumultuous, and other boyfriends, and me insecure, and she wasn't a Christian, and then I said, "That's it. If you're not a Christian, I can't stay with you." And then she said, "Okay," so she owes her whole salvation to me.
Credit where credit is due.
But then we got married a year after college, so because I went to film school and all that stuff. But anyway, it was Was it, or 2 years? I'm sorry, 2 years. Yeah. So, but that's the genesis of
Right,
it. So,
right.
Wonderful.
So this comedy writing class, apparently that, in addition to moving forward in the rows, that captured you a little bit. But you didn't stay in comedy. You did marriage.
Well,
is that what you
yeah,
were looking to do? How did that come about?
I had a checkered past in my professional career. My degree was also in communications with minors in public relations and creative writing. So therefore I was in that comedy writing class. So after college and my graduation, I went into the business world for about 11 years. Then I shifted to a part-time job as our kids came along, and taught tennis. I was a professional tennis teacher. And so I did that for a long time, and then I decided, what else can I do? And I went back to school, got my master's in my 40s, and stepped into a private practice. As a marriage and family therapist, specializing in women in the transitions of life, as well as a lot of couples work.
That's wonderful. I love that you went to school in your 40s. Oh, yeah. I love that I sometimes think, I don't like it when I ask kids, what are you going to be? And it's like, you get to try different things and have different routes. So
my personality was like, I love change. This staying in as a therapist for this long is the longest I've ever been in anything. It's amazing. But it was a good fit.
Yes. Yeah.
She was looking at physical therapy, and then she started talking to people. And
I went in and I volunteered at this physical therapy place, and I kept saying, as I was, massaging them or bringing them the hot towel or whatever, I go, so how does it feel to not be able to get down on the ground and play with your grandkids?
It was all about
and I kept
what's
going on, and I kept,
right.
adapting my little therapy to what's going on in your mind and heart. And so when I came back and I said, no, physical therapy isn't for me, I think I'm going to pursue being a real therapist. And my family and friends said, that's it, Ann.
They knew
that's
that was
you.
your gift.
Well, you have to understand, there's a thing called wounded birds. That may sound like a strange phrase, but she always attracts these wounded birds, all these people from our church and different people, and they just kind of flutter to her, and because she listens, and it's like, she just has this face in the grocery store line. You're going to go, okay, here's my problem. Why are you doing it? Why are you telling her these things?
The doctor is in, post-it note on my forehead.
So she finally found that niche. But going back to college a little bit, she was in. She wasn't foreign to the comedy world because I did a radio comedy show, and she was part of the cast. So
cool.
she performed, and we have her. We're both on tape with actually the person who played. Bart Simpson, Nancy Cartwright's her name. So she went to our school at the same time. So that was kind of the little claim to fame at our little college radio station. But it was a half-hour comedy show every week, and we did that. But she was always part of it, and she did theater when she was younger and all that. But it's just like she wasn't dim enough to think she could make a living at it like
the rest of us. What are we doing?
Forget it.
You were so right. Yeah.
Well, it's funny. The first time that we actually met Robert, we wanted to go. We wanted to see a sitcom taping. We thought it'd be amazing to go
just
see
to
it.
kind of see how it
so we went up to see New Adventures of Old Christine.
Julie Louis-Dreyfus.
Oh, she's unbelievable.
Yeah. The best.
Yes,
everyone
absolutely.
recognizes it now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But we knew it then, right?
Loved her.
So anyway, just going and we sort of settled in or whatever, and then this guy comes out. And we're like, oh, this must be the director coming out.
Yeah, I thought you were the director.
Sort of
you kind of came
welcome
out.
us and then head off and direct the episode. And he sort of settles in and makes us all laugh, and we're just sitting there going, and it was. I mean, he was funnier than the show.
No, don't say it. I said we weren't supposed to say
Julie,
that.
I apologize. You're funny too. But we were laughing so hard in those little breaks. It was like when they do a break or whatever, we're like, oh, good, this guy's back. And what surprised me, honestly, there was like a group of people, right? And he said, where are you from? You were just doing crowd warm-up, which is like, well, you're just so amazing. I mean, you got to improv and listen and be funny and everything else.
When anyone answers you, you ask a question, don't do that, because it's going to be so funny. And you're like,
there's also a feeling that you're going to get roasted, right? That was kind of someone's going to say, and so this group says, our church group came in or whatever. And I thought, here he goes. He's going to open it up. And you're like, what church? Oh, that's amazing. we're so glad he made some funny joke, but not at their expense.
Yes.
And then moved on to some guy who was making his living doing like online poker or something like that. I mean, it was just amazing. And so we just walked out like, wow, that guy was so talented. We just thought, well, that was it. You know, it was the show was great. The whole experience was good, whatever. We just thought that was sort of the end of it. Then we end up on a little film set. Yeah. And we look over and we're like, that. She goes, that's the guy. I'm like,
well, I have to say, you were in the parking lot. I'm like, how do I know this guy? It really took me some time.
Yeah.
And then somehow it came like, he was the comedian. And so yet again, we meet you and we did this short film together. That was fun.
I have two other friends from our church, and we were in a drama group together. They said, we saw you on Drew Carey. So every once in a while, you know, different shows you do, it's like, oh, I saw you someplace. And other people go, I don't know where I know you from. Have you ever seen a sitcom film?
Right?
That's right. That's right.
How did that even come about? I'm just sort of curious about that world, right? I mean, it's a curious one, this little niche thing that you do, but you've done it for a lot of different shows.
Yes, it was a great career until COVID and the Kardashians killed the sitcom. So they're all gone, all streaming and all. So, but for 30 years, that's what I did. I didn't have to go on the road. I was able to stay home and just take a couple gigs here and there. But for the most part, I was able to stay here. But it all started with a friend who was a comedian, and he lied his way into a show and told him, "I got the greatest warm up for you ever," and it was him. And he was pretending to be an agent, and so he got it. And so when he got the job, he says, "Okay, we got to write a routine." And so the two of us spent, I don't know how long, a whole week, but just devising every kind of game thing. How could you talk? Where do you go?
Right.
And then,
as a two-person thing or as a solo?
It was just for him.
Okay.
He was going to do it alone.
Yeah, but you're just
And
working on the
do
material.
that.
Right. And how to keep this
so
thing
we
alive.
worked on it together because we'd done comedy together separately, but we were both individual stand-ups, but I always worked on his material. And because I was going to be a writer, I was going to write screenplays, and he was going to be the stand-up. So anyway, he kept doing it for a while, and then he got a better offer for another show. And my first show was Golden Girls because he had worked up to that. And so because I wrote all the material with him, I knew the stuff. And so then I started leaving that behind and started doing my own ad-libbing. And that's what really I found my niche. But that it just fell into it. And people would come and see me at shows, especially when I would do a club where I'd just do 10 minutes. And then they go see a sitcom and say, "Oh, you're doing 4 hours. Oh, that's where you belong." I go, "I know it is." It's like, how do I translate this goofing off with people into a career? But I that's what I did for years and years.
Right.
And it is interesting because you're on, you have to keep the audience engaged and because they're changing sets, they're doing different things. And during that time, I mean, you get so exhausted if you were just waiting there and you were keeping things going. And so it really is, I think, a special kind of talent to do that kind of thing.
It is that little niche in Hollywood that only about 4 or 5 of us are really.
Oh, really?
And there aren't hardly any sitcoms anymore, so I've retired from that.
But
it was a lot of fun. It was great, and yes, you have to have the ear of the producer to know where the laughs are. And they're down. I better bring them up. Or okay, they're good. They can rest for a little bit because they get tired of me. You get tired of anything after 3 or 4 hours. So it's like let them go a little bit. Okay, now hit them hard, and now bring somebody down. So get the energy back up. So it's just.
And when you consider the different groups that are in a warm-up audience, you may have a row of Girl Scouts, a row of detoxing, addicts, tourists from other countries. The mix up of the type of people in the audience and what their normal response or what they're able to respond to with humor is so varied, and he had to somehow unite read the room and adapt to each of these groupings, if you will, and make sense of it in a funny way.
Right.
So it's really a particular skill set.
When you look at the pie chart, if you will, of the material that you were doing, towards the end, maybe when you felt like I really have knocked this out, or maybe there's one of those shows where you thought there's where I was really flying. What percentage was scripted stuff that you'd kind of done, or bits that you had done, and what percent was just that riffing with the audience?
Well, I call them structured ad libs. Okay. So it'd be who's come the furthest? Someone's from another country, you bring them down. Yeah. There's always a couple questions you're going to ask that'll be funny and they'll make the audience laugh. But pretty much it's just talking to people and finding out what their lives are. Yeah. You use the set piece as this is the launching point. Now let's just see where this goes.
Kind of goes.
So you learn how to just talk extemporaneously for hours on end, but it's never about me. I would do no material. I did none of my own stand-up. Because they don't care about me, and you learn that very quickly. They're here for the show, and I'm the person that by the end they'll like me.
Right.
And you were quicker. You like me quicker than others. But it takes a while. After a couple hours, people go, okay, now we'll listen to you, and then I can do some stand-up. But I wasn't that interested in doing it. So my stand-up lagged, but my crowd work grew. And so most people doing stand-up are terrified of crowd work. I was like, what are you talking about? That's what I do. So I'd rather do that sometimes than just here, I have to do another half hour of just prepared material. But anyway, that's as a comedian, you kind of find your niche, your lane, and that became mine. So that was
I think you had a love
career.
connection at the end. I think there was a couple
Oh,
that
you
went
were
off.
like, you were trying to introduce this couple. You meet this guy, you meet this girl, whatever.
That doesn't surprise me. I'm sure I did.
Maybe they're listening and they're like,
I spent
"Who's
my
the
whole
guy?"
career trying to get an engaged couple to ask the other one to marry. Not engaged, but pre-engaged. Please, I think one time a guy finally asked a girl to marry him in front of everybody.
Really?
But afterward he goes, I'm not really. I didn't mean
Oh, just to do that
it.
for
I was like, come on, I really wanted it.
That was it. That was it. So tell us a few. We're going to talk about marriage. I think that's ultimately. I think that's all of our hearts. I mean, truly.
No, I came here to talk about me and my career.
But so tell us some of the shows that you worked on, and
so I started off on first one was Golden Girls, and then from that I wrote Designing Women, saying I'm doing this, come see me. So they came to Golden Girls, saw me, so I got Designing Women. So I did both of those shows for a long time. Then I moved over to what was called the Miller Boyette. It was a Friday night ABC show, so that's Step by Step, Perfect Strangers, Family Matters. There was a couple others in the middle of all that, and those kind of shows went the way of the dodo in the late 90s. Where was it? Early 90s with Seinfeld came in, and so I started doing Wings and Old Christine and Becker and the Drew Carey Show. I did the Hogan Family in the middle of all that, and then eventually moved on to others. I ended up on Norman Lear Rebooted One Day at a Time, so I ended up on that. But it was just a great run, a lot of fun shows. Just Shoot Me was another one that I did the whole run of that. And there's so many failed shows where they've got 13 episodes and that's it, or the pilot and that's it.
No one ever saw it.
I did the pilots of Frasier and Everybody Loves Raymond, and those two episodes. Did the last episode of Cheers. That was a lot of fun.
Sure.
But those pilots. You just saw those shows. You just knew. But
you saw it,
you saw so many shows. I was like, well, if they're lucky, maybe they'll find it after 13. But Frasier was brilliant out of the gate, and Everybody Loves Raymond, hilarious and brilliant out of the gate. So those two shows, boom, just big hits right out of there. So it was fun to see, like Julia. I tell everybody this. I say, look. You become what you always were in Hollywood. And if you were a good person, a nice person with your head on straight, you get famous, you're probably going to stay the same. But if you were a jerk and you were hiding it until fame came along and you didn't have to pretend anymore, then you become insufferable. So I call it the 3-year rule. Year 1, you're grateful for the show. I can't believe I got this show. And it's a hit. That's fantastic. Year 2, they start to if they're going to turn, they start to believe their press right around year 2. And year 3, it's all about me. And then they become insufferable. And you know those actors. And we've seen them fired from shows. But if it goes, those are just But Julia, and I always use Ted Danson as the other example. Two of the best people. They come up and hug, and they're just so friendly and real. And they realize we're the luckiest people in the world. We get to do what we love to do, and so they appreciate it. And I remember all the other stars. I was with. So I did the last episode of Cheers, but Becker was Ted Danson. He played kind of a curmudgeon doctor, and all the other actors decided that they wanted to have a raise, and so they had a strike and. Ted was the only one who came in, and CBS went to all the other actors and says, you can leave, but there'll be somebody replacing you tomorrow. And the actor said, well, I guess I like this show more than I am. So it's you are not Ted Danson. Ted can do that. Right. You cannot.
That's right. There's plenty of other actors.
Oh boy.
Plenty of other actors. That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So if he goes off for 4 hours and chats a lot or whatever, when you get home from that, are you done with words and you're a very quiet person, or does he continue to talk? Is there a lot of, verbalization?
There's a good question for you.
Well, Let me backtrack on that
Yes.
question to give you the question I'm asked. Oh, maybe I've been asked maybe 100 times.
But we're not that good, so we probably wouldn't even think of it.
So I'm
And
glad
the
you-
reason
I'm
I
glad you
say
brought
it is because
up.
I'm backing into your question, and that is, oh, you're married to a comedian. He must be so fun to live with. Is he just funny all the time? Does he just keep you laughing all the time? And I go, he is funny, and we have a great sense of humor together. However, he's not obnoxious about it. It's not like a Robin Williams who's always on and who has to just absorb all the energy in the room with his humor to keep proving himself in that way. So that was a real relief. And is he normal in the other ways of moodiness or ways of not being funny? Yes, dear. So let's see. Going back to your question, when he came home, there was energy because, as you know, as performers, you come off a show and you still got that jazzy feeling going until it releases. So
If it was a good show. If
it was a
a
good
bad
show,
show, you just
true.
come home.
yeah, and I could
exhausted.
tell the minute the car door closed and
Right,
you walked in the
whether it
door,
was a
the
good show or
vibe
not.
was,
Yeah.
I could read it
was.
like that.
I got it out of my system. I
Yeah.
mean, it's not
Yeah.
something I don't
Yeah.
have to be on. Now, I'm an intellectual person with jokes, and so I'm writing them and creating them. So that's what she gets first thing in the morning. I was thinking about this. What do you think about that? Is this and so? But it's trying to joke out on somebody. It's like you have to tell them, I'm thinking of this routine. What about this? Because some people just come up and they just go into a routine and it's like, oh, you're not really talking to me. You're doing bits right
Doing
now.
that. Yeah.
Oh, and it's so tiring. It's like, can't you just be a real person? Can't you just be authentic? So I've always tried to be, a real
but
person.
To the point of Bob's work, I have been a witness and a participant for 40 years of his comedy experience. You can't help but that. Last thing at night he says to me is probably about it. First thing in the morning, wakes up and he's been cooking an idea. I've read everything. I've heard everything, sometimes multiple times. So I've been a real, a person of witness to what his work is about. I feel like after 40 years, I've had a master class in comedy just because I know so much about it just through his experience that I have, tagged along and participated in many ways, seeing him on stage or hearing about his material or giving input along the way, which sometimes is received better depending on how I deliver it, my critique. So after 40 years, I'm slowly learning how to do that better.
Yeah.
Usually I just cut to the chase. No, that's not funny.
Let's nope. Next.
Next. Anyway, so that's been an interesting and wonderful, rich part of our marriage over the years is how to do that together.
Yes. Now tell me a little bit about your writing.
Oh, thank you. I've been writing since I was a young girl just for my own pleasure. And my mother was a poet as she in her later years. Our daughter is a very fine writer. And so we have these 3 generations of women who love to write. All that to say, I wrote essays, poetry. I've written a lot of talks, but I put my short stories and my poetry into a binder, put it into the closet and said, when I die, my kids will discover it and they could read about me and know me better. So I was in a writing group, and they said, you need to publish. You need to get your stuff in one place. And I go, okay. And I did it not to say, I want it to be Oprah's book of the month.
Yes.
It's in one place. They've not papers flying all over, and it's printed nicely. It has a nice cover, and I can give it to my family and my friends and go, here, learn about me some more. And so that's what it was about.
That.
And I did
love
that 3 years ago.
And so you have a book that has all that.
Yeah.
Isn't that wonderful? I think that a lot of times we don't think we have things to share or gifts to share, and we think, I'll put it in the closet, and how you kind of go. And other people, I'm sure, can look at it and go, me too, and to enjoy that. So I really love that. And so do you continue? Is that something?
Yeah, I do continue when time allows. So basically, I write about 3 things, and the book is kind of divided into 3 sections of things that are really important to me and about me, if you will. One is my comments and thoughts about relationships and different relationships that I've witnessed or experienced. So that's in the book. Second part is my spiritual journey. So I write about the elements of my faith and my questions and the challenges. And then the third part is all about nature, because I am a nature girl, and you will find me under a tree or by the water whenever I can be. And so I wrote, nature experiences, which give me a visceral response. So that is basically a way of expressing, oh, you want to know, Anne? Here's this book.
I love that. I love that. And it seems like things from the heart. Do you know
absolutely.
that you're creating from the heart, or what God has shown you, and being able to share that? So I love that.
Thank you.
I love that. I mean, I just do. I think with people, everybody has gifts. Everybody has talents. And to find what that is, and that creativity, and to encourage other people, and then to share it with one another.
Yeah, and I can use it in my work if there's a piece that applies to a client who's struggling or needs a different insight, or I can read a piece and they can respond to it. So it has its uses other than just a Christmas gift to everybody.
Yeah.
But if you want to encourage the people, try everything. And I don't know if you know the author Kurt Vonnegut. He wrote Cats in the Cradle and did not Catch 22. I'm sorry, I've screwed up his whole lexicon of.
He was good. He was really good.
He's from Indianapolis, and I love him, and I have all the short stories, but I can't remember a single thing he wrote. But he has. They're just a great quote that I will also goof up entirely. But he was talking. He was out on an archaeological dig. They sent him out in high school, and the archaeologist was talking to him, and they said, "What do you love to do?" And he goes, "Well, I like this and this, but I'm not good at any of it." And he goes, "What does that matter?" He goes, "Well, you have to get an A. You have to." They goes, no. You're missing the point. The point is to try everything.
Yes.
Try everything,
Yes.
and then eventually you'll figure out what you're really good at. But don't worry at all about whether you're good at something.
Absolutely.
And he says that opened up his eyes, so he just started experimenting with everything. And it said he didn't care if he wasn't good at band. He was in the band. He didn't care if he was, and he became a fantastic author. So Slaughterhouse 5. There it is. I got it. Okay.
Well, I love that a dancer dances, an actor acts, someone who writes poetry writes. You're kind of like paints and draws. At what point do you go, oh, then you're really good? It's like, no, enjoy that, do that. Nothing that has to be in a gallery. It doesn't have to be Oprah's top. I mean, it really is like, and I think that's what's fun with you guys, that you've done lots of different things and tried different things.
Yeah.
So
One of my favorite quotes is from the poet Mary Oliver, and I've had it on my fridge forever. You'd think I can remember it perfectly. She says, the way to live life is to pay close attention, see the wow, and tell about it. So that, isn't that cool? So that's kind of how I like to live and direct my experiencing the world.
It was neat. We had on the previous podcast, we got to interview a couple, and she's about to turn 70, and she writes for Chicken Soup for the Soul and some other things. And so one of the things that she wanted to do between 69 and 70 was to say yes to a lot more things, right? She ended up doing a drum circle, and she ended up doing laying down some beats with like a DJ kind of thing. And just all these different things that she thought, I would never do these things. She said, as long as it doesn't, there's a chance of breaking a bone, I'm going to say yes to it, right?
Say yes.
And it just is incredible. And then she's writing down, and some of the things that she's writing down are things like, this is not for me, I guess somebody wanted to do some sort of boxing, and she's like, you're going to punch me in the face? Not for me, And even there was some wisdom in what you should and shouldn't do, but, going out and trying all those different things. That was very inspiring to me. I love that.
One other thing, you did a movie, so tell me that's the name of it and how you can see it. It's really funny. We were able to see it.
Well, it's and that came out of our church. It's called "Can I Get a Witness Protection?" And it was just one of those fun things where the people in our church said, we want to, because we were part of a drama department, and people said, we want to see you do this on a bigger scale. And so it's like, all right. So there was a church that needed money, and so we rented that church, and we just used that church pretty much as the set. And the whole story is, it's Some Like It Hot or Sister Act, where a guy sees a gangland murder, and the FBI hides him away in a church, and he's the assistant pastor of the church. And then the first week he's there, the head pastor dies, and so a guy who knows nothing about religion, he all of a sudden becomes the head of the church. So it's his journey to finding faith as he goes through. So it was just a blast to do.
VeggieTales.
Oh yeah.
And my kids, VeggieTales. I heard a lot of VeggieTales.
Well, how that came about was there were two main guys. Phil Vischer invented it, and then Mike Naraki was. So they were Bob and Larry. Those were the voices. And when they would go off and do a movie, they had to keep the pipeline of the stories continuing because that was their only financial resource. So Disney had Disneyland eventually in the 50s, but you've got to find a way when you're an animation house to keep the product going. So a feature takes a long, long time. So they brought me in to help write some of the short episodic ones. And they had to find somebody who understood the Bible and had a Monty Python sensibility about them. They found people who were very, very good with the Bible and very, very silly, but they couldn't find somebody who was both. And so two other friends and myself started working for them. And the first day I brought in 7 pages of notes, and the first one was a Western, and the last page was about Joseph. And by the time we left the meeting, they said, "We want to do that idea you have about Joseph as a Western." I said, "Yes, that's my favorite idea too."
Yes, so that was my vision.
It's always yes and. And so then it just became every time they went to do a movie, I'd come in and start doing some more. And unfortunately, the company, as I'm sure you've heard, just because you're creative doesn't mean you're good with finances, and so they went into bankruptcy so many times that everybody that I worked with was eventually fired or let go. So it went away after a while. But it's really fun now because I've done podcasts with kids in their I say kids, but they're in their 20s and they're so excited.
Oh, that's what I'm saying.
This is my favorite episode. And it's like that Chris Farley sketch. So when Larry and Bob had a pie in the face, you remember that?
I remember that.
And that's what it's almost what it's like. And I'm going, I wrote that 20 years ago. I don't remember. But I do tell everybody, all right, this is my favorite joke that they cut. So eventually wrote one called Sherlock Holmes, and it was about the golden rule. And so Sherlock Holmes is trying to find. So if you understand who the real Sherlock Holmes is, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle wrote him, and he played the violin, but he also snorted cocaine. And if you read the stories, that was what they did back in the 1900s. Before it wasn't illegal, he was like gave him exactly. It was in Coca-Cola. Yeah. So that was my joke. So I had Larry, and he was Dr. Watson or whatever his name was, but he had a bottle of Coke and a straw up his nose and bubbles coming out of his ears, and he snorts it, and all the huge bubbles come out, and he goes, "I don't get this at all." Anyway, somehow they cut that. I don't know why.
Probably for the kids.
Yeah. Mama, what does that mean?
If they imitate it, no, go ahead, let a kid imitate that.
Some jokes are just for you.
But they always want to have the adult jokes in the we put a lot of adult jokes in there for the parents. So they can
that's what I enjoyed them. They were so fun.
It was a blast doing it. It really was.
Yeah,
okay, awesome. So now what we want to talk about is just your heart for marriage.
Oh, now we transition. Okay.
Okay. No, it's fun getting to know you guys, but I know what was cool is that I follow Robert, and I kind of going through, and all of a sudden he's talking about marriage retreats, and that's so much our heart, and then hearing what you do. And so you've been talking about marriage retreats, so tell us more about that.
It all started from a pastor on a cruise, and he watched my performance, and he came up afterward and said, "So your wife's a therapist?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "I think you should think about doing some marriage retreats." And it never entered our head, honestly. It's like I do my gig, she does hers, and that was a light bulb. It was a real light bulb moment. Going, wait, that could work, because he says you have to understand, men do not want to go to a marriage retreat. This is, they don't want to go to therapy. And when we went to therapy, when our marriage went kaboom, year 19, for years, I didn't want to go. No, I'm not going to do it. No, I'm fine. Don't want to do it. Men just don't want to go there because they know they're going to get blamed for everything, which is absolutely true.
In the end, no.
But it was that moment where he said, if you could make them laugh at the beginning and then just soften the blow and then bring in some teaching, he says that'd be a really good thing to do. And so that's what started it. And I came home, talked to her, and we started putting materials together. And the byline we're using is, I've been doing comedy for almost 40 years, but she's been dealing with couples for over 22. And so her expertise, my humor, and so we label the weekend as humor, healing, and hope. And so it's this transition where let's laugh, have some fun, and then let's talk about the real stuff, where it's communication styles and our marriage and what happened and the forgiveness and the need for that. And then she has all these great tools. After 22 years, she's done so many talks for different church groups about your marriage emergency kit, and here are the 4 A's, and let's bring your A game. So all these different tools that she has, and then I interject humor throughout it, and then we end up with this, hopefully, feeling of hope that the couples have tools. We were talking before this podcast started about if you just tell these young couples, here are some tools. This is what you can use, and
Start using them now.
Yeah, but our
Any couple, honestly.
our
but-
relationship, when we were in therapy, our therapist gave us one fantastic piece of advice, and that was, it's called the 25-5. I'll just jump into that.
Yes, please.
I'm like an evangelist for these things. But he looked at us both and said, you're both salespeople, aren't you? And I went, what do you mean salespeople? You both sell your point of view. You don't let the other one win. You just keep pushing because you sell it. And he says, you guys need to try the 25-5. And it's like, okay, you've piqued my curiosity. What is that? He says, all right, the first person who has the grievance or whatever, you get to talk for 25 minutes. Yeah. The other person can't say a word. You're just writing notes. And when you write those notes, that's 25. And then the other person gets the 5. It's not rebuttal. It's just clarifying. I heard you say this. I heard you say this. I heard you say this. And you can be angry while you're doing it, but you can't comment. It's like, I heard you say
The
this.
scribbling gets
And
long.
right there. And it's like they have to agree. Yes. No, I didn't say that. Here's the clarification.
Right.
So that's the first half hour of the first day. You have to wait a full day at least for the next person to come back with their 25-5.
Yeah.
Right.
And now it's my turn. Okay, well, I feel blah, 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 and you take notes. And it just diffused so much of the escalation. Go, bum, 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 bum. And it's like, okay, I just have to listen. And then the night you go, I guess that makes sense. I guess that makes sense. All right. So that tool, so when you do a marriage retreat, the event is filled with just lots of tools. And then by the end, she has this whole list and what are your top 3 emotional needs? And we had friends who've been married for close to 50 years. And they said, we've never done that. We've never talked about our emotional needs. That was wonderful. And another couple said, gosh, that was like 6 months of therapy crammed into 2 days. And so it's like, people, they really do need, some people are on the precipice when they go to these retreats. Yeah. Some people are just young and say, well, let's go because it'll be fun. Yeah. You don't know where people are, but it's really interesting and fun and rewarding, frankly, because I've done stand-up for so long. It's like, okay, I'll go out and be funny. And I get to raise money for different groups when I do different things, for whether it's crisis pregnancy or I did one for a rehab center last night. Those are nice, but this you feel like you're really making a difference.
Yes.
Because it's like, this is going to impact somebody's life with something that they didn't have.
Yeah.
So, there's much more to say about all the tools.
No, I'm interested. So with the emotional needs, what's that idea?
Well, the concept is, and this is what I use regularly with couples, I have this list of maybe 12 different emotional needs, and each of the couple circles and identifies their top 3 emotional needs. And these are needs that you've been carrying for a very long time. They're almost woven into your mental, emotional DNA, but you can identify them. And then you sit and your partner does the same thing. And they can be very different. It's rare that they're the same. And you start to define what does, let's say, security mean to me. Now, I may describe security in a particular way. I like it when the house is locked, that you're checking in on this, or we have this amount of money in the bank. You define security in a certain way. Another person will say security means I know where you're going, and I know that you're not going out to a bar with another woman. I know that you're protecting your conversations with people that aren't good for you. Whatever your definition is, the other person gets to know what it really means to you. Not what they assume, not what they think is their definition or a better definition. It's what they need to know about you. And therefore, in that same conversation, you can say, and so in the day-to-day, this is what you can do or be aware of about security for me. When you say this, when you do this, that feels secure to me. And now I've given my partner a target to aim at instead of guessing, shooting from the hip, or not even being aware. And if each person in that partnership is able to do that for the other, now we're talking about the real things that matter in the day-to-day and how we live out how we respond to each other and what we give to each other. And that it makes a huge difference to the people that I've worked with. So we've
I love
incorporated a way to do that.
I love the, first the identification of something, right? But then the clarification of it to say what this really means. And then sort of the practical, so now that I know that it's important to you and I know what it is, now what? And so by drilling that down from what really matters and then, clarification and then down to here's what you can actually do to speak to that need. That's huge. It's, similar to the love languages in many ways, right? In sort of defining what it is, but then here's what you can practically do because here's what it means to me.
Because basically a good marriage and a sustainable marriage relies on emotional security. And so you're helping your mate know what is that emotional security that I feel. I understand what yours is about. Okay, let's do that. Because emotional security, when I feel secure, I feel loved. That's what we all want, right?
It's true.
Yeah. So it gets right to that sense of feeling loved.
But we don't open with that. You don't go.
Let's hear that.
Okay, folks, here we go. Get down. All right, guys, rip your heart out. Throw it out there.
There's a lot of comedy before that.
You ease into that. So.
So you guys, you did this one. How many times have you done this? In May, I saw you did one. Was that the very first one?
We did 2 before that.
So a couple test markets, as we say. So we're still fledgling, and we're writing the book. A comedian, a therapist walk into a marriage.
Yes.
And so we're taking the. So we have the weekend talks, and then with all of her tools, she has many more tools that you can use other than the emotional needs, but different things. And so we're unpacking all that, and then I'm trying to find. We're going away to Hawaii in 2 weeks, and the theory is it'll be a lot of let's get a couple of these really worked out.
Right.
We'll see.
That's great.
I'm kind of like by the pool.
That's right. Balance.
So we do not have. She did one. We were in Santa Maria, and she did one. So it's
fun.
they have been there. She's done years of talks, and I told her the other day, what's fun for me is I do a weekly Bible study, and it's been online ever. It was years at a church, but then Zoom happened with COVID, and so it's just been on that. But it's something that I love, that I can be funny, but you get to talk about God. And that's what I found really nice at these retreats. Because I've done couples retreats as a single comedian, meaning I was married, but I was just by myself. But you're trying to reach people. And there's just something different about using comedy to break in and then get to something that's really, really serious and then will touch people. And I've always liked that, but I just say, how do I translate what I do into something that would actually help? And so the two of us doing it together, for me, was like this big, wow, this is great. We got to do it. We're going to help people. And she's like, I do this for a living. I don't want to go out in front of those people.
Right. So I imagine then right now you're sitting down in your practice with couples, usually in a one-on-one situation. Maybe just the gal instead of the guy. You were talking a little bit to me earlier about that.
Sometimes, well, I'll work with a couple and then I'll give a little time individually to each one so I can, I don't know, perceive, and their response might be a little bit more open and vulnerable. And then I can bring them back together.
Yeah. And what's different about that in terms of giving a couple some tools because you can perceive because you're getting so much information from them versus in a way you don't know where people are, right? How does that differ when you get up there to go, here's these tools, you don't know what their story is.
And exactly, you don't know what they're coming burden laden with. The dynamics, their family of origin, history. You can just basically watch the guy or person who's sitting there like this to the woman who's leading in and wiping her eyes. Whatever the combination is, you can see
a lot of elbowing going on at those types of things.
And so there's certain signals that you can read, and then at the end when we have Q&A, you get a better feel for what it has meant to them, how far they've delved into it, and which pieces that rings true for us. And there's no controlling of that. You put it out and ask God to bless it in a way that let them hear, Holy Spirit, what they need to hear and why. And how often, and you've heard pastors say this, somebody comes up to you and says, and when you said this about, helping out in the kitchen, that meant so much. I go, I don't think I said that. But, they hear it, and God bless them for listening.
Seriously, you think that you have to be the Holy Spirit. You're the one who has to say everything. And so many times the Holy Spirit can speak through you, and you're like, that was from him. That had nothing to do with me.
I'm not that bright.
No, exactly. No, but that's really wonderful to be in the center of that.
Did you jot down down the next one. So you guys have one in November that you're doing, November 7th through the 8th in Phoenix, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And Lighthouse is the name of what? The church? Or the
Lighthouse
the church.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So if people are interested in attending, if they're in that area or interested in traveling there for that purpose, where would they go? Would they go to your website, or where would they get information about
Yes,
that?
I just put up a brand new website, and the marriage section we're working on, that's the next thing to be added in the next week or two. But yes, so Lighthouse Church, Phoenix, Arizona, it's on the eastern side, western side of Phoenix, and it'll be Friday and Saturday night, and I will have to give you that information other than,
Okay.
We'll put it in the show.
Yeah,
notes.
but not just people from Phoenix. I think everybody from Arizona should drive to it.
Yeah.
I think
Do you know, we've heard, I mean, you are so much fun, and then just to have that, I think it's going to be really powerful. And what you guys are talking about is churches or groups coming in, and you guys coming in and doing a weekend.
It is such a need, and so many churches, they have maybe a married group, but they don't always have the counseling available and the opportunity to address the real deep problems. And
there's a lot of date night comedy events, and we've done those where it's just the comedian getting up, and maybe someone come up and talk for 5 or 10 minutes. But this is much more intensive.
But you are trained. I think that's a lot of times for us is we are coaches and we can come alongside. But when somebody comes something bigger, we're not trained for that. And so it's wonderful that somebody is trained that is able to deal with things.
It certainly, I think, takes the opportunity of giving information to a deeper level.
Now, this may not be your goal, but do you actually get clients from events like this where they say, wow, I got a lot out of that. We'd love to meet with you via Zoom or whatever?
Sometimes, and because I'm licensed in California, that's how it works.
So you talked about in 19 years there was something that, tell us a little bit about
This
that.
was what, year 19 of your marriage?
Yeah,
when
you're
something-
19 of
yeah.
44.
I don't think you shouldn't pry. That's
Well,
weird.
This is what we're
No, I
supposed to
said,
do.
I
Journalists,
said
we're
do
digging
not talk about this.
Oh, shoot.
I was
Okay, never
very
mind.
I need to
clear.
leave the room a moment.
All right, we'll back this up. I'm going to back it up with two things, and one is communication style, and the other one is anger. And you can jump in whenever you want to.
Yeah.
But communication style is very important for most people to realize that you both came from a family of origin. Every two people come together have the way that it's like your mom's spaghetti. You know, that's just the way it's done. And then you get somebody else's mom's spaghetti. Well, what is this? This is not as so communication styles. My family. Not a good communication style. And I'm a comedian because of it. So in our household, very Christian, and that's not the Christian thing to say. That's not the Christian. We don't think that way. We don't do that. And so it's not that she was excessively strict. You just learned you don't say these things. And if you have something critical, it's like, we don't think that. But I do. No, you don't. That's not the Christian way of thinking. So everything was tapped down as far as honest communication. But sarcasm was allowed. So if you can make them laugh, then it was allowed. So I learned I could get in whatever I wanted if I made a joke out of it. People laughed, it was okay. So teasing became a very big thing in our family. It's
And
very
sarcasm.
distressing. Teasing and sarcasm, horrible. So I go into a marriage where if I have something negative to say, I'm going to do it in a sarcastic way or a teasing way. And it hurt her, and I didn't know. It was just wrong. So that's layer number one. Layer number two is because of that family. And granted, it's my sin, not my family's sin. But I never learned how to deal with an anger problem. And that is hold it down, hold it down, hold it down, hold it down. We don't think that. We don't want that. And then I would just go boom. So the big explosion. And
If you're in the splash zone of that, it's tough.
and so to get fairly rude on this, and it only happened every once in a while, I would say, well, it's not that bad because it's only every once in a while. And it's like, no. It's like going up and here's where I'm rude. You may have to edit this out, but it's like peeing on somebody's leg. And it's like, well, I only do it every year or two. It's like, you peed on my leg. It's like, that's just,
That's not good.
what did you do? And I walk away and I'm fine. I've relieved myself, as it were. And the other person is left with a mess.
Hey.
So the anger problem and the lack of the bad communication, it was my blind spot. I think everybody has a blind spot, and could be pride. Could
I don't
be
have one.
selfishness.
I don't.
Exactly.
Tell us about
You don't. But it became very clear in a very big way that it's like, oh. And then I started thinking about, oh yeah, that happened, and that happened with my family, and then that happened with friends, and that happened at work. So I was like, yeah, I got a problem. I've got to deal with that. So we went to therapy, but I went to two. I had my own therapist, and she had her therapy. We had our couples therapy, and so My therapist, this little meek little man, just very, very quiet, and he would go, yes, I used to have an anger problem. I go, shut up, you never had an anger problem. Oh, I did. I was angry. And he was it's like, you never were angry in your life. And he would try and tell these stories like, sorry, that's not angry. But it was always, this is not about you. It is not about you. You have to get over that. You have to learn how to deal with your anger. And the verse that really helped was, above all else, guard your heart. It's the wellspring of life. And that's what I think saved our marriage, because it says, note these words, above all else, guard your heart. Because whatever you put into your heart, that's the wellspring of life. So you're polluting your well, as it were. John Ortberg has a book about clearing out your stream. There's different people who talk about it, but you have to guard your heart. And so when we would get into a fight, I would, as the actor that I am, or comedian, I would rehearse the hurt. I would drive along and redo the argument and rehearse it and just go over it. And this is what I should have said, and I'll say this next time. And you rehearse it, and you rehearse it, and you rehearse it, and it just gets you more mad.
And I become the bad, worse person as the other person rehearses the hurt.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
He becomes better and better.
because I'm winning.
Yeah.
That's right.
And so I learned, and so to this day, she'll go, "Are you rehearsing that?" And I go, shut up. But so the tools of guarding your heart and learning that I had an anger problem, which it sounds stupid that you don't realize because if it's just an every once in a while thing, it's like, well, this is 99% of my life, and I'm doing everything. I'm responsible. I pay the bills. I go to church. I tithe. I do all these good things. I gave you a house. I'm trying to do it. But that little 1% where you blow up, it's like, no, that eradicates everything. Yeah. And so that was, then we had to get into forgiveness and with our kids and with Anne. And so that was the big kaboom. So went back to therapy, and the therapist at the end, he was great, and this is for the couples therapy. He says, "Are you ever going to have a problem again?" And I said, "Let me be honest with you. I like you, but I never want to see you again as long as I live. So no, I will never come back here again." Yeah. And so, I mean, he laughed about it. He understood where I was coming from. Yeah. But it's like, no, our friends came alongside and everything. So that has, it's almost been 25 years. But she stuck it out, and through that hurt, and she
and I didn't have that emotional security because
that you were
of
talking
that.
about.
Right. Yeah. So when's this going to happen again? I don't know. So
always on edge, like waiting for that next earthquake.
And the other wonderful thing I inherited from my family is that I'm hypersensitive. So you're a comedian, I'm a comedian, and I'm hypercritical because I'm looking at the world around me and seeing what could be improved, what's silly, how can I make jokes out of this, but also hypersensitive. It's all my mother. I'm telling you, God love you, Mom. I hope she's in heaven and she's hearing this now, but yes, it was you. And so, but that, so she had to walk on eggshells because she says anything that's too critical, that's going to hurt my feelings, that's going to make me angry. So I was like, all right, she put up with a lot for all those years. Yeah. And of course, it's just been smooth sailing ever since.
Never said. Yeah.
So were you doing any counseling at that time, or that came a little bit after?
Well, what's cool about this is, no, I was teaching tennis at that point. And so we got into counseling, and I'm going through it months, years, however long we're doing it. And I said, I really like this.
Oh, it could be. So you were going to counseling.
I went. So the success or the what counseling had to offer, I said, that's really cool. I think I would like to pursue that, and that's what got me into. So out of the ashes rose something that became very important to me, to us, and to the people I work with. So that was God taking something and turning it totally inside out for a blessing and a benefit, and to continue to expand who I was becoming in relationship to Bob.
Yeah. So whenever you do have a big problem in your marriage, I found it fascinating that couples, they'll trust you at that point. It's like,
that you've gone
so
through.
If you're authentic and you admit the fact that you have these problems, they go, "You were so vulnerable." It's like, well, I'm just telling you my story because I'm a jerk. That's what that's what's in my head.
Right.
Is no, you're actually authentic and you're saying real things, and I can relate to that. Yeah. And so then people open up to you and will tell you what's going on in their lives. Tim Keller has a book about walking with God through pain and suffering. And it's just a wonderful book, but he just talks about empathy, that when you are in a position, whether it's cancer or sickness or divorce or whatever it is, and addictions and recovery, these people they have empathy because I've been there. I know what this is like. Yeah. So with marriages, it's the same thing where it's like if we can help somebody and give them these tools to prevent some of these things so people can wake up and see it. It's just been really good.
I think that's what's so powerful, I think, as Christians, is that we like, oh, everything's great, everything's wonderful. And when you get in small groups, when you talk to other people, you go, oh, I'm struggling. And how, like you said, that empathy part, because sometimes you don't want Christians to or even somebody to go, oh, like kind of this, I don't deal with that, instead of having someone with the empathy going, gosh, I've been there. That must be so frustrating. Yeah. So I think that doing that for one another helps so much. Yeah. So,
because empathy is one of the things I teach about empathy, is the definition of empathy in its most simplest form is it's using the mind, the logical, and the heart, and the emotion equally. And they weave together to give you a response that is balanced. Because too much feeling gives you an emotional rush on someone that isn't helpful. Too much analytical thinking, well, let's solve it this way, and you should do this, this, and this, and you've run against people who say, well, just fix it. And no, that's not helpful. But the mind and the heart combo, if you can allow people to say, what part am I missing? Because people will process first through their mind and logic or through their heart. Which direction do they go first? And so to admonish them to think both sides of that coin is really going to make the difference.
Powerful.
Yeah.
But the correct way is the mind first. That's the correct way.
That's right.
And it's not always women that are leading with the heart. Sure. As he said, he's very, very sensitive. And so a lot of his response, although he's very logical, would come from this heart place of hurt and easy high sensitivity.
Yes.
And I'm trying to counterbalance that with the logical and calm.
Sure. Yeah, I think sometimes we have met couples where it is different. Do you know, where that you think overall this is how men and women are, but we're all each different. So, yeah.
So when you, either in your practice or when you're addressing a larger audience, what's one of your favorite tools? And I love the fact that you use tools because when we created this, we were thinking, what are the things, and we were like, tools, they're like tools. And we were like, oh, tools for marriage. So that's why we named it that. So even you bringing that up multiple times, it's like, that's what we want. We want these tangible things they can grab hold of. What are the things that the couples that you counsel with, one of those tools that's really worked for them, or that you've seen work in your relationship, or that you share with the audience at large that you find people really grab onto?
Okay. There's a variety of them.
We've got your emergency kit.
Well, if you look at the physicians and emergency responders handbook, they have this list of things that you're absolutely supposed to do when there's a severe injury or crisis with a person you're responding to. And it covers everything from, hold their hand, tell them they're going to be okay, make sure they're warm, tell them you're getting help, don't leave their side, find out where the pain is. Those things. And those are exact things we need to do when our spouse, someone we love, is suffering greatly in an acute disaster, emotional disaster, or whatever terrible trauma has come upon them. And so I made a list. We show one of those emergency kits that you can buy online or at the drugstore, and it's got the blanket, and it's got the tape, and it's got the tweezers, and the cold pack and hot pack, and all those things. And I go through that and talk about what those represent truly in marriage, such as Band-Aids. You got a box of Band-Aids, and they have all different sizes and shapes, everything. The importance of that is for when, let's say Bob is hurting from something, is in pain, what kind of hurt is it? Because then I know what kind of Band-Aid to give. Because a slice is different than a puncture, is different from a burn, is different from a sprain. So symbolically saying a a miscarriage is different than getting cancer or your kid leaving home. So to help them define and understand what is the pain that we're trying to bring a balm or a Band-Aid to, keeping them warm, making sure that, hey, you got to eat, you got to hydrate. A flashlight, we always have those in the kits, right? You shine a light on the problem, you really see what you're dealing with so you don't stumble more. Infection, those little ointments, you don't want whatever they're hurt with to get infected because of the words you're using. Your sarcasm, your criticism of it, your insensitivity. So we've got this little box that we're pulling out all this stuff and talking about.
I think we need donuts. That's the
Donuts.
next.
That's right.
Donuts are important to
Yeah,
coffee.
exactly. So if you come to the event, you'll hear and see more of that. But that's just kind of a
love that.
interesting little visual aid that has some energy and fun,
Right.
but real poignant.
Yeah.
To
Visual,
how you
I
care.
think, helps too.
How you
Yeah,
care.
visual helpful to remember, but also some real wisdom in that, because at the heart of a lot of that is really that understanding of what's going on with the other person, right? So that you can respond in the right and appropriate way, right?
I'm not going to leave you.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll be here with you.
That's huge.
And that is part of the whole sense of security.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I love you and I'm not going to leave you. I think is huge when you're going
Right.
through conflict because you're like, I don't want him to leave. Anything. So that is powerful.
Yeah.
Just run in the room with the kid going, wee, wee, wee. That's like, someone's bringing the emergency kit.
Bob says, wear that nurse's outfit.
Oh, this took a turn, but a very interesting one. Hold it. Another thing we emphasize that she has is we just call it partnership. And it was, I did a big a cruise one time with a pastor who shall not be named, but it was a marriage retreat cruise, and it was just me doing comedy. Anne was just coming; she was just
I
there.
just was along for the ride.
But the pastor got up and spent, I think, 45 minutes just blaming men for everything. It's because this is, you're the leadership, so you've God, then it's the leader, then the woman underneath that. And I understand what he was going for, the military structure, but every single problem was the man's. And so I got up and I made a joke like, so I guess women don't do anything wrong. And
Yes.
I never worked for that pastor again because they said, you went against our pastor. I go,
undermined
that was
the
the
message.
elephant in the room. Was like, come
Right.
on. The humor kind of points out, sort of, it takes two to tango.
Plus,
So
I can say anything I want if I'm sarcastic and funny.
that's what I thought. But evidently, his followers,
Yeah.
his acolytes, did not like that. But the partnership. When our son got married, I said, you have to understand that this is a partnership, and it's not one-on-one. It's a zone defense. It's you, your partner, and God, and the three of you make up a team, and you have to make sure that you're always doing it as a team. And so. There are books out there. There are a lot of things out there that and we're not the couple. We're not coming out here as we're the experts on everything biblical. We're the experts on everything marriage. It's like, no, we're just a regular couple. We are Christians and we have a point of view, and our point of view is, it's really a partnership. And if you have this strength and I have that strength, I'm not going to say, well, you can't do that because you're the woman. It's like, well, that's your strength and you're better at that than I am. So, hey, team, let's go. And if God says that's okay, then just do it. I'm not talking about big role reversals, but it's the two of us together, and we both have our things that we kind of fall into in marriage. Like I do the finances, she does this over here, and the nurturing I think we did together, but you were much better at it than I was. So you find out what your skill set is, and you have to be open, I think, as a couple to do that. So with that partnership, we have a whole talk about bringing your A game, and that just means you don't slack off, because so many, and I'm blaming men here, but men make the team and think they get to give up. It's like, well, I made the team, and that happened with my sister. Frankly, it's like the marriage started, and he had the conquest, and then
Done deal.
Done.
I don't have to do anything
Yes.
more.
done,
Yes.
gave up, and it's like, what happened? What happened to what happened to that
Wooing.
wooing and winning me, and it was just done. So the marriage didn't make it. So this partnership, bringing your A game, bringing 100%, knowing that you could be cut from the team. You really want to bring your A game all the time. So there's certain things we can have fun with. And make the men go, oh, right, sports analogy. I get it. My A game. I'm not bringing my A game. I am just sitting on the bench. Wait a minute, I'm not doing that. So there's humor underneath it, but there's a meaning underneath it, and it has this philosophy that we have about trying to push people toward that partnership.
Because believe me, I have seen all sorts of wrong, bad behavior in marriages that comes from both sides. And I could stand in front of a crowd and say, and this will happen if you do this, and this will happen, and be all sorts of, the dark warning cloud, which I know it happens. So trying to balance, like, there's a warning here, but here's how you can approach to heal. Here's how you can approach so those things don't happen and you're not cleaning up the mess after the fact.
Yes,
So
that's so good. Yeah.
And so what advice would you offer to couples who are in that early stage, either they're, about to be married or they're in their early married life or whatever, and, they want to do this well. Everybody who gets married, I think, thinks we're going to, go the distance. We're going to be the old couple in the park holding hands and staring each other down or whatever. What type of things would you encourage them with in terms of the tools that they might put into practice early on, or those that if you went back in time to talk to your early self as you first got married, that you might encourage yourself to put into place and keep going to go the distance?
good question. There's so many. I think reflecting back on our idea in our conferences about the idea of partnership, and it is the concept of there's a we, not just a me. Mm-hmm. Now you have two individual me's that make up the we, but you kind of have to think now as you step into the realm of being married, what's this we thing? How is it going to impact the us today, tomorrow, 5 years, and be committed to that? And for those people who can't make that transition, or that's not an orientation in their heart or spirit when they go into marriage, that's where the selfishness comes in and the lack of adaptability to what marriage naturally brings. Living together, the habits, mashup of new habits and things, children, aging parents, all of these elements that are going to hit them for sure. It's like dodgeball. It's not if you're going to get hit, but when. Mm-hmm. And so the we thinking, and if you can get that settled early on, that sets up a sustainability of how you approach together and better how to respond with a sense of the bigger picture.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah,
otherwise, you go. We put in front of the people like a spectrum of isolation, the total me, to togetherness, a oneness, and everybody is somewhere on that spectrum. And you don't want to be way down here, and you don't want to be so far that you lose your individuality. Yeah, and there's that codependency, we're tied at the hip. But there's that healthy space where the we is active and responsive and respectful of the me that's part of it.
I love that.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
I would tell them to be voyeurs. This sounds very strange, but look at other marriages. When we learned how to raise our kids, we did it by looking at other people with kids and said, "We're not doing that." Oh, that's a good idea. And so we gleaned from those other couples and how the kids behaved on how we would raise our children. And I think people should do that for marriages. Go, well, we're not doing that. Well, we're doing that. So start making those goals early on about what we want our marriage to be. Work on your communication style. What is it? How do you? I mean, for us, it was huge. We didn't think about that. It was like, well, we're in love. Well, we're going to get married. This is going to be it. So the lack of planning is. It's like if you have goals, then you will have something to aim towards. And you talked about finances before, and I think finances are very important.
Huge.
What are you going to do with your money? How are you going to do it? And I tell everybody now, I say, because I'm a very big believer in tithing, but I made the mistake. I didn't give myself that money. So it was like I went 90% percentage different. I tried to raise it up over the years, but let's just go 90 and 10, where 10 goes to God, and then 90 will be for everything else. And I should have given 10% to God, 10% to me for retirement, and then live on 80. And I didn't do that. I stretched too far. I think my family wants a big home. I'll give them a big home. And it was just too much pressure. And so in the recession of 2007, we lost our retirement. That was it. We had a big house. A third of the value went away. That was it. So it's taken me 20 years to build that back up again. But if I had established the pattern from the beginning, 10% of what we make goes to God, 10% goes to us in a retirement fund, and we're not touching it, then I wouldn't have the problems. Now we're finally, first time in my life, we're financially sort of secure because I've got Social Security, I've got residuals, I've got pensions. Okay, I can breathe a little bit, and we're still working. And she'll be winding down at some point. I'll keep going for another couple of years. But it was the tension of finances is so prevalent in young couples, especially when you're following a dream. Well, I want to do this, and I've got to do this, and I've got to invest this much. And, well, we also have to put food on the table, put the kids in school, and get the house. It's so expensive. So if you have common goals and you work on it together, she was always very good about letting me run the finances. But
he kept me very aware. I was like, knew every month what was happening. I wasn't like out there in La La Land going, whatever.
No, faithful and frugal. We went through a couple of the dips in our financial picture. We say, okay, it's faithful and frugal time. Yes. You trust in God and His track record, and you don't spend any money. That's it. Everything's off. Nothing on the and then it's like, okay, you can relax a little bit. Now we just have to be faithful. We can go to a restaurant. But I think if you can handle or talk about finances and communication style, and then make those goals for your marriage, it's like you're ahead of 90% of the people who are just going into it blind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you ever talk to your folks about doing a mission statement for their marriage?
No, that's a great one.
Yeah. Companies do it all the time.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
But a couple should do it for themselves, and then how it expands to the family and their home that they're building and setting their sights on. What is important? What's our mission? What are our guideposts? What do we say is important and a priority for our family?
Okay.
And you write it down, and then you make your decisions based on what you have both agreed to and promised for each other. And that makes a lot of decision making calmer, easier, and more easily agreed to. Because
So
you've already
can
set
you,
it up.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but kind of what would be
What would be your mission statement,
Or,
for example?
yeah, I don't want to put you on the spot.
mission statement that you might
Bob is in charge.
Oh, wow, okay.
So it's very simple.
It seems like you wrote it.
It's easy.
It went through a couple drafts, but it's easy to memorize.
And big black marker.
There you go.
Well, the idea of the spiritual. What is your spiritual part of your mission as a family or as a couple? The work-life balance, perhaps. How you want to give to your community, or how you want the relationship with your children to always be in your home. What do you want your home atmosphere to be about? So those are some of the elements.
Great.
And then they make it as creative and unique to them. Everybody's mission statement is going to be beautifully unique.
Yes. And change over time.
Sure.
Yeah,
According to circumstances.
That's
You
right.
bet. But
That's
it
great.
gives you kind of a plumb line to work from.
Of where you're going. And
Well, what a neat thing for God to use the gifts and skills that He's given you in such a unique way. How, like you said, I didn't really see the crossover between these two different areas. And it's like, here it is, right?
Like
Here's how
light
you
bulb.
can serve the body of Christ and serve and improve and help marriages and bring glory to God through the gifts that He's given you, where you get to continue to be in your lane, but doing those things together, like doing things like this
It's
together,
so much
right?
fun.
There's just nothing better.
all right, so tell us how we can how they can contact you, your website, and we'll put this in the show notes too. But
Well, my website is it's very simple. It's robertglee.com.
Okay.
And so if you just go there, it's got you can write me directly. I'm on Facebook and all that other stuff, all the social media, but it's all on the website.
Okay.
And so then if you were interested in the marriage retreat, you can just contact me.
And I have a webpage, ANNEWLEE.com. And you can find me on that webpage.
But you can't go to her for counseling unless you're in California. But marriage retreats we can go
Anywhere.
across the
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for spending time with
you.
us and sharing your
Welcome.
stories. I'm so proud of what you guys are doing, and we're excited to
you.
see what happens next in these
God's-
marriage
how God's
retreats.
gonna
And
use you.
hope you do well and make them laugh out there on the high seas. And again, we just thank you so much. We
Yes,
thank you
thank
guys
you.
for tuning
Thank
in,
you.
and we hope to see you again for another episode of Tools for Marriage.
thanks for listening.
Please subscribe or follow to get notified with each new episode of the Tools for Marriage podcast.
We're cheering you on.